Thank you very much, and I would like to add my welcome to all of you to this great conference on Powering the People, and thanks for this standing room only crowd for coming here. I think this is, as Bill and Tony pointed out, a great opportunity to look at the innovative electric technologies that are helping to transform the world, not just the world of energy. I gave a speech recently and I said, you know, when you think back 10 years ago, we didn't even have, just a short period of time, beginning of the last decade, we didn't even have, you know, iPods or iPads or Facebook or Twitter. And you can go back further and there's so many more. And we're, you know, on the electric side, I mean, smart grids and electric vehicles and things of that nature that are so very, very, very exciting. You know, about half the patents in this country are electric technology. So when Tony talked about that durability and how much it offers opportunities to spread quickly, it is exciting. And now we can Twitter here your questions. Make sure you don't get mixed up and do Charlie Sheen instead. And incidentally, I hope when you came in that you liked those electric vehicles out there. One of them is mine, but I think I have not had so much fun in the last several months driving by gas stations and not stopping by to visit, and to drive for about 2 to 3 cents a mile as opposed to 12 to 15 cents a mile. And I think events in the Middle East are demonstrating just how important these technologies are going to be. I would like to first thank some of our sponsors for their generous support of this event. IBM for underwriting the 3 panel discussions, Census and Cisco Systems for helping to sponsor the conference, and Itron, Silver Spring Networks, and General Electric for their support. Can we have a hand for each of those companies? To get things started, we have Bill Taylor of Fast Company magazine. When we were trying to think of a speaker to really kind of start this conference off with a bang to talk about creativity and innovation, you know, we thought about a lot of people in the energy business, and we said, well, no, let's go outside. Let's go outside the box and get somebody else and get somebody that could really give us a dynamic start. So I mentioned that to Bill, and he said, and you got stuck with me. But you know, Bill really has an unbelievable reputation for under his leadership. You know, he was the founding editor of Fast Company magazine. The magazine is, I'm sure many of you have seen it and read it regularly. It's devoted to business creativity and entrepreneurship. Under his leadership, it has just won about every award that you can win in the magazine business. In recognition of its impact on business, Bill was named Champion of Workplace Learning and Performance by the American Society of Training and Development. And that puts him in the same realm as past winners, Jack Welch of GE and Fred Smith of FedEx. So that's no slouches up there. That's a pretty important company. He is the author of Mavericks at Work, Why the Most Original Minds in Business Win. And his latest book is called, rather long title, Practically Radical, Not So Crazy Ways to Transform Your Company, Shake Up Your Industry, and Challenge Yourself, which is an in-depth look at 25 organizations that are making deep-seated changes under the most trying circumstances possible. And I think that we can certainly hear more from his insights into leadership in turbulent times. So I could go on and on. His resume is huge. But without further ado, let's welcome Bill Taylor.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, March 3rd is my first public event with a Charlie Sheen joke. I'm sure it will not be the last, but there you go. Look, I know this event is all about the future of electricity and the electric power industry, but indulge me for just a moment as I reflect on the past. We actually just celebrated the 15th anniversary of the founding of Fast Company, so I've been kind of thinking a lot about the early days, and it occurred to me that in the very earliest days of the magazine, before the first issue even came out, we convened a conference of our own around the theme, how do you overthrow a successful company? Now, it wasn't a bunch of internet hotshots eager to take on the establishment. It was change agents and innovators in illustrious big companies, companies that were doing fine, from industries that had been around for ages, but who sensed that there were massive shifts on the horizon and who wondered whether their colleagues had an urgent enough commitment to embracing those shifts in shaping what would come next. That was 1995, 15 years ago. And here we are, 15 years later, in some sense, still thinking and worrying about the very same question. And that's because the work of making deep-seated, meaningful change, sustaining success and unleashing innovation over the long term really is the hardest work there is. It's hard in troubled companies and industries, and it's even harder in successful companies and industries like this one. But that's the work innovators sign up to do. That's what it means to be a leader today, and that's what I want to talk about ever so briefly this afternoon, how to unleash long-lasting change in fast-moving times. So here goes, and let me start with the big picture. We are living today through the age of disruption. You can't do big things anymore if you're content with doing things a little bit better than everybody else or a little bit differently from how you did them in the past. In an era of hyper-competition and nonstop reinvention, the only way to stand out from the crowd is to stand for something special. Originality has become the acid test of strategy. The term I like to use is strategy as advocacy. Winning organizations today don't just offer competitive products and services. They stand for important ideas, ideas that are meant to shape the competitive landscape of their field, ideas that are meant to reshape the sense of what's possible for customers, for employees, for investors. For so long, and this was certainly true in the electricity business, we lived in a world where the strong took from the weak. If you had the biggest facilities, the deepest pockets, the leading market share, you won almost by default. The new world of business is one in which the smart take from the strong. The most successful companies today don't just outcompete their rivals. They try to redefine the terms of competition by embracing one-of-a-kind ideas in a world filled with Me Too thinking. Now let me show you how new ideas can breathe fresh life into a long-established industry. In the spirit of Charlie Sheen, and the fact that we're all still scratching our heads about that Oscar telecast on Sunday, let me talk to you about the motion picture business. If you were to say to yourself, who wins the Oscar for best business performance in Hollywood over the last 10 years? It wouldn't be one of the big six studios. It wouldn't be one of the giant movie chains. It would be Netflix, the fast-growing, game-changing innovator that has transformed not just how we watch movies, but what movies we watch in the first place. And what a story. Reed Hastings starts the company in Silicon Valley after he has a crummy experience at the local video store. And he basically invents an entirely new way to rent movies. DVDs by mail, monthly subscription fees, no late charges, hold on to the movies as long as you'd like. And the company basically takes the market by storm. He launches it in September of 1999, goes public in May 2002. Originally, in 5 years ago, it had 4 million customers and a stock price of $25 a share. Today, it has 20 million customers and a stock price of $215 a share. It is a passion brand in the market. Netflix has the highest satisfaction scores of any e-commerce company in any industry, and it's a force to be reckoned with in Hollywood. So it's a disruptive technology story. It's an impressive business model story. But when you spend time at Netflix, as I have, and talk to the people there, they don't really want to talk about the technology or the business model. They want to talk about the ideas the company stands for, the impact it wants to have in its industry. And you see, the genius of Netflix is that it has transformed what was once and this will sound very relevant to the people in this room, a system built around one-way distribution and limited choice into an industry built around customer-to-customer interaction and more informed choice. Because it's all, I'm sure most of you are Netflix members in here. You don't just rent movies at Netflix, you rate movies. And then Netflix has very clever software that uses your ratings to go into its database and predict to you what other movies you would like to watch, even if you've never heard of them or seen them before. It's a very powerful example of collective intelligence at work. Netflix now has 3 billion movie ratings in its database. Customers today rate 4 million new movies every single day. It's got 100,000 titles in its library, and customers rent 98% of those titles every single quarter. So it hasn't just put Blockbuster out of business, it has ended the Blockbuster mindset in Hollywood. Its system makes individual customers smarter because they can draw on the collective brain power of millions of other customers. That's innovation. That's transformation. Netflix has succeeded as a company because it has changed the game in its industry. And that, I would submit to you, really is the essence of innovation today. The only sustainable form of business leadership is thought leadership. So we're all going to spend today immersed in products and technologies and services. And what I would suggest is at some point, set aside for a moment the products and technologies around which you've built this business, or all of the outside forces pushing down on this business, and ask yourself, what are the ideas that define how you do business, that distinguish you from how every other company in this field does business, and that capture the impact you want to have on this business going forward? Or let me put it in a slightly different way. You know, with all of the pressures and challenges in the world, so many of us wrestle with, it's kind of a cliche, but wrestle with that age-old business question, what keeps you up at night? What are the worries and anxieties that nag at you? And that's, that's what we sign up for when we're leaders. But I would submit to you that the bigger question for innovators, and certainly for innovators on the front lines of business, isn't what keeps you up at night, but what gets you up in the morning? What makes you and your colleagues more excited than ever, more creative than ever, more determined than ever in an environment that on most days seems more confusing and more treacherous than ever? And this is a lesson I have learned over and over again over the last few years of this economic crisis. You can't build something special, compelling, distinctive in the marketplace unless you also build something special, distinctive, compelling in the workplace. The most creative executives I've gotten to know, sure, they're wondering about what's the disruptive business model that separates us from the competition in the marketplace. But they also ask themselves, what is the glue, what is the cohesion that holds us together in the workplace? You can't be about the business of powering the people outside your company unless you're also in the business of empowering the people inside the company. Your strategy is your culture. Your culture is your strategy. You see, and I don't know if you'll find this strange or you'll agree with it or not, but I really have come to believe that success today is about so much more than just price, performance, features, technology, pure economic value. It is about passion, emotion, identity, sharing your values. Obviously, in an industry like this, you got to wake up every morning, go to work and say, how do we make whatever we do more productive, more reliable, more higher quality, and so on, more functional? But the real opportunity for the people here, the real magic in the marketplace, is when you make your organization more memorable for everybody to encounter. I understand you're rethinking a lot of your electric contracts and all of your economic deals with customers. But what is the emotional and psychological contract you're striking with customers that separates you from everybody else? How are you going about the business of dealing with this industry more interesting, more colorful, dare I say it, more fun? I know interacting with a utility, most people say, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me, but to me, that is what, particularly, sitting out there looking at those electric cars, looking through the exhibit halls, you're not just trying to give people new services. You are, one way or another, trying to change human behavior and get your customers to think about things they haven't thought about in a long time. And people are going to want to think about those things with you only if you're interesting and clever and fun to deal with. Let me show you what I mean. One of the companies I write about in this new book, Practically Radical, is a bank in the Pacific Northwest called Umpqua Bank. And I'm sure when we think about industries that are fun and colorful to deal with, retail banking immediately leaps to mind. But this is kind of an impressive company. This guy, Ray Davis, takes over 15 years ago. And it's your kind of run-of-the-mill, boring, stodgy bank with a bunch of branches in the Pacific, in Portland, Oregon. But they really had dreams of growing to be much bigger. And he sat down 15 years ago and said, you know what? If we want to grow this bank, there were 12,000 community banks in the United States back then. How are we going to grow this bank if we behave the same way 11,999 other community banks behave? What would happen if instead of that, we rethought and reimagined, not necessarily what products we can sell, because there are CDs, car loans, mortgages, whatever, but we rethought and reimagined the experience of encountering a bank in the first place. And what's happened in the last 15 years is absolutely remarkable. It grew from this little bank in Portland, Oregon. It's got branches up and down the West Coast, $8 billion of deposits. It has become a passion or lifestyle brand in an industry that's really devoid of passion. How'd they do it? They said to themselves, what if we created a banking experience that appealed to all 5 human senses? What would that be like? Sense of sight. Well, if any of you are in the Pacific Northwest, you walk into an Umpqua Bank, it looks nothing like your typical American bank. It looks like kind of a Starbucks on steroids, and there are beautiful couches and lovely wood, and they go out, and in every neighborhood they operate in every city, they recruit local artists. Lend us some of your paintings, lend us some of your sculptures. We want to think of this as kind of an art museum, and they'll sell the stuff for the artists as well. But every one of their banks looks a little bit differently. What should a bank sound like? There's no Muzak in Umpqua Bank. This is the only bank I know that's got its own music label. And they actually signed, it's the Pacific Northwest, they signed deals with indie bands, grunge rock, whatever. Send us your MP3s, we'll play them in our stores, and they've got little kiosks, and customers vote on, ooh, I really like that song. Let me press the button there. And twice a year, they actually press physical CDs called Umpqua's Greatest Hits, and they sell the CDs in the stores. What should a bank smell like? I'm from Boston. We're still dealing with it. The real estate fall. In Boston, it's the smell of fear. You can walk over and you smell the perspiration. And at Umpqua, it's the Pacific Northwest, it's the smell of coffee. And they've got all their tellers, and this guy's like trained as baristas, and they've got cappuccino machines there, and they'll happily brew you a cup of coffee, and they actually sell 1-pound bags of Umpqua blend coffee. They're very proud of it. They source it from some organic fair trade place, and they sell that kind of deal. And by the way, whenever you're there and you're depositing a check or making a payment on something, they end every transaction with a lovely little gold box of chocolate, and that's what Umpqua is supposed to taste like. So you've got beautiful furniture, nice art, music, coffee, chocolate. They said to themselves 5-6 years ago, you know what? We close at 5 o'clock like every other bank, but why should we put a padlock on the branches once we close? Why don't we have in each branch a community relations officer who's responsible for, once the banking business ends, the new day begins? And all of these beautiful branches now at night host book clubs, neighborhood groups, Chamber of Commerce meetings. In Portland, the most popular activity is what they call stitch and bitch clubs. People come and knit and then complain about their spouses insignificant, and you got the coffee and the chocolate and people working themselves up into a lather and so on. And so you ask yourselves, why do they bother? Well, I think they bother for the same reason, I'm not suggesting, that the folks in this room might want to think about why we would bother. They want to change the conversation with their customers. I read the First Amendment etched beautifully into the walls of the museum outside. A lot of times it feels like there's a constitutional amendment we haven't heard of that said the process of interacting with the bank has to be drab, boring, colorless. I don't know, is that in the Constitution? Did I miss that? I mean, they said, why can't we change the conversation with customers? Say, every time you encounter us, It will be interesting. It will be fun. It will feel like we're really deeply rooted in the community. And if you want that next 25 basis points on your CD, or if you want the lowest possible rate on your auto loan, we're probably not the bank for you. But if you want to do business with a bank that every time you encounter us, we're friendly, we're fun, we're interesting, we're surprising, we're the only bank for you. We have become a passion brand in an industry devoid of passion. But let's face it, most companies in most industries have a kind of tunnel vision. Everybody is chasing after the same opportunities everybody else is chasing after, and everybody is missing the same opportunities that are hidden in plain sight if only you can look at things a little bit differently. The companies that win big today are the ones that change the game. And the job of the leaders in this room is to help your organization see things that other organizations just don't see. Or to put another way, and this is going to sound like a really silly leadership term, saying I stole it from the late great comedian George Carlin, the most creative leaders I have gotten to know cultivate a sense of what George Carlin used to call, in a very different LSD-driven environment, vujade. What's vujade? Well, vujade is the opposite of deja vu. Deja vu is I've never been to the museum, I've never been to the, but I walk and I feel, wow, I feel like I've been here before, you know, previous life, my karma floating around or whatever. Vujade is the opposite of that. Can you look at an industry you've been in for your whole career? Can you look at a set of problems you've been working on for the last decade and look at them as if you've never seen them before? And with that fresh set of eyes, find a unique line of sight in the future, which is why, by the way, I am no longer a tremendously huge fan of benchmarking, at least as is traditionally practiced. I mean, what good is it to compare yourself against best practice in your field if best practice ain't all that great to begin with? The most effective leaders I have gotten to know say to themselves, if I'm looking for ideas and practices to change how my organization does things, why don't I go out and compare myself against companies that are the best in the world in whatever I'm looking for, in whatever field they happen to be in? Look far outside my field and find, you know, we all want new ideas and excitingness, but we all always also want to minimize risk. Well, one way to get new ideas and to minimize risk is to find ideas that are already working, that are already proven in completely unrelated fields, and then migrate those routine ideas over here into your field. And ideas that are routine, everyday, proven in one industry can be absolutely revolutionary when you migrate them into another. So what can you learn from Netflix? What can you learn from Umpqua? What can you learn from Apple? What can you learn and apply from Southwest Airlines? Here's the message. You can't let what you know limit what you can imagine. I can only speculate on the centuries of expertise in this room about electricity, utilities, technology, and all that. And that's spectacular. That's great. The trouble is when expertise gets in the way of innovation. And I'm afraid that oftentimes it really does, that what we know as leaders limits what we can imagine. And so if you can get over that obstacle, that's the formula you need to innovate. And hopefully that will help you wrestle with what I think is the most important question facing every leader today and every person in this room, and that is, am I learning as fast as the world is changing? If you feel like I'm getting the best ideas from the widest variety of places, then I think you've got the best chance to keep learning as fast as the world is changing. So thank you so much for having me, and good luck as you invent the future of this proud industry. Thank you very much.